Hey guys, Tara here from Recovering Book Hoarder, and today we are going to do my wrap up for January of 2021. I have to say, this was a really good start of the year for me. I did get through my entire TBR that I had chosen, in addition to 2 books. Okay, so we are just going to go through in the order that I read each of these books, the order that I finished them. Okay, so the first book of the month was The Wife by Alistair Burke, and this is a psychological mystery kind of deal, and I don't want to give too much of it away. So basic premise is that there's a woman who had been kidnapped when she was 16 years old. She's found, I think she was like around 19 whenever she was found, and she has a baby with her. Her parents take her back. Everything ends up being very hush-hush. It is not a kidnapping that's discussed. There's very little media involved. Everyone around her assumes that she had run away and came back with a baby to be a burden to her parents. She ends up marrying this guy who seems to be the perfect guy. He's a hot college professor, successful author. They seem to have the perfect life. He is then accused of kidnapping, and that's all I'm going to say. It is a dual perspective told from the perspective of the wife, in addition to one of the detectives that is investigating the case. I could not put this down. I read it in 2 days. It was really good. I did not completely see the twist coming, which is saying something. A lot of times I figure out what's happening by middle of the book. In this case, I did not. It ended up being a surprise. I wound up giving this 4 stars. I am doing the I don't know how to say this, Copal rating this year, getting the total, then dividing it, and rounding either way to get my stars. So on the Copal system, this was an 8.86, so it was a 4.42, so it got rounded down to 4 stars. It was very close to being 5 stars, though. I definitely want to read more from Alistair Burke, and I do definitely recommend her. Okay, the next book was my biggest disappointment of the month, and that was The Secret of the Old Clock by Carolyn Keene. I just don't think that this has aged well, is really what I want to say. The only prop I can give it is that when this takes place, which I had no idea, but these were written like back in I think it's the 30s, 1930. So I have to give some allowances for that. She was a forward-thinking female for 1930, and her parents were pretty forward-thinking. Her dad, I don't think she has a mom. I think it's just her and her dad, and then there's a housekeeper. Maybe I'm totally wrong with that. I don't think there's a mom. Anyway, they let her do things that I don't think were very common in the 30s. She's definitely extremely intelligent. That comes across. I just felt like I had never, I think this is the book that I've read that had the most, like, everything that happened just seemed so convenient. And I thought the descriptions were like so obvious and unnecessary. Just the very first paragraph alone kind of put me off. Nancy Drew, an attractive girl of 18, was driving home along a country road in her new dark blue convertible. I don't know. I just feel like I don't need you to tell me that somebody's attractive. Just kind of like describe how they look to me. Anyway, that was my 1 star of the month. I will not be continuing with that series. Right, then I read my first 5 star of 2021, and that was This Tenderland by William Kent Kruger. This was our group read for Krista Books and Jams for her Patreon book club. This book is just so beautifully written. It is literary fiction. It's also a coming of age story, and it is about these 2 orphans, two white orphans, who are taken into an Indian reform school back in the Great Depression. They are the only two non-Indians in this school. First of all, what you learn about those reform schools, which were still a thing up until, I think it was like the 1970s, they were horrific. They were very horrific. And I honestly didn't know anything about them. This was my first introduction to them, something that we are only now, I feel, learning about our history. But they are treated, at least the one for sure, is just treated terribly. His name is Odie. And ultimately, Odie, his brother, and then two other individuals decide to run away. And they're kind of on the lam. It's compared a lot to Huck Finn. People describe it as being very similar in rating to Where the Crawdads Sing, which I did not read, so I can't comment on that. And it takes a lot from the Odysseus story. What is that? The Iliad, I think? Is that the Iliad? I think that's called. Terrible. But it is just such a beautiful story. And it has one of my absolute favorite first lines from a book, possibly ever. First line, it's actually the first paragraph. It's not that long, so I'm just going to go ahead and read it to you. In the beginning, after he labored over the heavens and the earth, the light and the dark, the land and the sea, and all living things that dwell therein, after he created man and woman, and before he rested, I believe God gave us one final gift. Lest we forget the divine source of all that beauty, he gave us stories. Loved it. Loved it so much. And there's several quotes that I highlighted in here that I'll want to revisit because the writing is just so beautiful. It's atmospheric. It's very character driven. Just so good. I didn't want to put it down. I finished it really quite quickly. I'd sit down and say, okay, I'm going to read one part because I think there is a total of six parts. And I would end up having to read through 2 parts at once. 6, I can't remember, 6 or 8 parts now. In any case, beautiful. I cannot recommend it enough. All right, then I had, this is my favorite book of the month and probably one of my favorites of the year. And it's only January, so if the rest of my reading months go like this, I will be so happy. This is what I would consider a 6-star read. And that is Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. I've always, he's just one of the most beautiful people, I feel like, to ever exist physically. And I love him as an actor. I think he's amazing. His writing is as equally as beautiful as he is physically. I just hope that he writes more. So this is a compendium of journals that he has written and kept. He is a poet. He loves bumper stickers. There's a bunch of bumper stickers in here. It's kind of multimedia. So you've got pictures in here. You've got things like that, like his cutouts. His handwriting is in here. Like that. I cannot say enough about this. This is the book I keep talking about. With my Audible credits this month, I'm definitely going to get the audio edition because he reads it and I definitely want to listen to him tell it in his own voice. So good. Just go buy it. I love it so much. I really hope that he comes out with more books. All right, then I read, this is from my 5-star prediction video, which I'm going to hold off on telling you what I thought about this book. I think how I'm going to approach my 5-star predictions is every quarter I'm going to review 3 of them so that we're not like holding out, wait until the very end. At the very end of the year, I'll do just a big wrap up. So this was From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. And all I'm going to say about this is it is a new adult fantasy. And I'm just going to leave it at that. We'll talk about this more when I do my 5-star prediction wrap up. All right. Then I read Life Stories by Mark Hall. And this is the story behind the lyrics for the group Casting Crowns, which is a Christian music group. And I enjoyed this. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I like knowing the stories behind the music, and this is exactly what it did. Also got into a lot of his testimony, and yeah, I mean, it was fine. It was good. Then I read How to Train Your Dragon, book 1 by Cressida Cowell. I was a little bit nervous about this going into it because I really did not love the Wizard of One series. However, I'm a big fan of the How to Train Your Dragon books, the movies, so I really wanted to give the book a chance, and it was fine. I don't know if I'm going to continue with the series. Maybe if I find the books like cheap at a garage sale or something, I would continue. It was not like the best book I had ever read. I forgot to say about my co-pile scores. Correct. Secret of the Old Clock, the co-pile score was 2.86, so I ended up with a 1.43 average for the 5-star. This Tenderland was a 9.7 on the co-pile score, so 4.86. I am not using the co-pile score on nonfiction books. To me, it only makes sense on fiction books. So, yeah, okay. So for How to Train Your Dragon, it ended up being a co-pile score of 5.71, and so that was a 2.85, rounded up to 3 stars. Yeah, like, it's fine. I don't know. I know these are like beloved books by some people. I just think it's fine. I don't particularly love the illustrations. I know that she does her own illustrations. They're not my favorite. So, yeah. We'll see if I continue with it. At this point, probably not. All right, moving into another 5-star read. And that was Fire Cannot Kill a Dragon by James Hibberd. This is a fairly new release. And if you are a Game of Thrones fan honestly, if you're a fan of the show, even if you're a fan of the books, but have watched the show, this does a lot of explaining about choices that were made. George R.R. Martin is one of the people that gives main interviews in here, along with pretty much the rest of the cast, showrunners, directors, writers, everybody. It's very similar to the Office book I read by Andy Green, I think is the one who wrote that. And if you love Game of Thrones, I really think that you will love this book. I really was very happy. This was one I had chosen for a book when a prompt was a book you have high expectations for, and it definitely did meet my expectations. Then I read The Mitford Bedside Companion, and this was for one of my 20 from 2021 books, and I absolutely adore Mitford. I love it so much. I love all the characters. I love the town. I was really excited to read this. I thought I would like it so much better than I did. I think my issue is there's a lot of excerpts in here, like really long excerpts from the books, and I just don't love them piecemeal like that. I like them where they're supposed to be in the story. The other thing is, I was really excited because there's like crossword puzzles in here and things like that. But when I got to the crossword puzzle, it was so small. There was just no way I could actually do the crossword puzzle. So I found that disappointing. But I mean, it was fine. I was brought to tears in some of my favorite scenes again. But I think that Mitford is better taken in context instead of out of context. So this ended up being 3-star for me. I did not do co-pile because of what it is. It's like, it's not a full story. So it's new essays, family photographs, favorite Mitford scenes, and much more. That's how I felt about that. All right, then I read Dream It, Do It by Marty Sklar. And this was, I think, the Buzzword for January. Dream. Pretty sure it was Buzzword. And Marty Sklar is one of the original Imagineers. He worked alongside Walt Disney before he passed away. He's the one that put out the release, the news release, wrote it for when Walt did pass away. He was an integral part of the building and design of every single Walt Disney park outside of Disneyland, I believe. Because of that, there was a lot of talk in here about the Disneys that are in other countries, which honestly, like, the only Disney I'm really truly interested in is Disney World. I'm not even like a huge fan of Disneyland kind of stuff. So the stuff in here about Disney World, I really enjoyed, and about like ride development, things like that. But the stuff about the other parks, I just didn't care as much about. Because of that, it ended up being a 3-star read. Then to continue along with the series this month, I read A Pale Horse by Wendy Alec. And this is the 4th book in the Chronicle of the Brothers. There's 5 of them total. I can't even tell you how much I loved books 1 and 2. Book 3 was like, for me. Book 4 here, I enjoyed so much better than book 3. So this was a 7.71 on the Copal, 3.86. So rounded up to 4 stars. And my issue with this, I purchased books 3, 4, and 5 from Book Outlet. Now, when I was reading book 3, from one chapter to another, it seemed like I was missing pieces of the story, even though it clearly went from in like page order. I don't know if there was a mistake and there was literally an entire section missing from the one that I have. And this one kind of felt the same way. The beginning half of this just felt so disjointed, and like pieces were missing. Like there was issues with the timeline. I don't understand it. The second half of the book, I did not feel had those same issues. So it's really the second half of the book that made this a 4-star as opposed to a 3-star read. I only have 1 book left. I am looking forward to finishing it. Who knows when I will get to it, but that's my thoughts on that. Right, then this is the one that I listened to and read physically, and that is From a Certain Point of View, The Empire Strikes Back. I read the first one, A New Hope, last year, and these are just the most fun stories. So it is 40 stories told from an uncommon alternative point of view, the same scenes. Most of the time it's from scenes that we have already seen. And it's just so fun. I love it. If you are a Star Wars fan, I cannot recommend this enough. So I'm just going to tell you that my favorite stories from here were A Good Kiss by C.B. Lee, This Is No Cave by Catherine M. Valent, Stet by Daniel Jose Older, But What Does He Eat by S.A. Chakraborty, Faith in an Old Friend by Brittany N. Williams, Right Hand Man by Lydia Kang, and The Wills Strike Back by Tom Engelberger. Those were my favorite from here. It was the same thing with the last one. This one ended up being better. This one I gave 4 stars. The first book I gave only 3 stars. And that's because there's such a huge variation in the stories. Some are much better than others. Some I really could care less about. But I would say, so I'm really looking at like the average of all the stories in here. And so I would say the average of all the stories in here were 4 stars. And that's that. If you like Star Wars, you absolutely need to pick this up. I'm excited for the next one. I'm really hoping that comes out next year. All right, then the book that I listened to was Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade. And this was an 8.42 on Copile, 4.21, so rounded down to a 4. And my issue with this book is that there was a lot of arbitrary swearing. I'm not against cursing in books whenever it serves a purpose. However, I really don't like it when it's just arbitrarily used, where there's like a lot of it and it doesn't seem to serve any purpose, and it really doesn't fit with the character's personality that I feel is presented. Maybe it had something to do with the narrator. Maybe if I had read it physically as opposed to listening to it, it would have not sounded as out of place. I'm not sure, but that was one complaint. And then my other issue was, it's funny because I absolutely love these characters. Love them. But they're kind of like the perfect characters. The female protagonist is like a perfect character as far as like how I read it, and the male is really quite perfect also. And I found it kind of unbelievable how very perfect they were. However, I did love them. So overall, I liked this a lot. And I didn't even say what it's about. So this is a book about it's a plus size female protagonist. She's really into fanfic for her favorite show, Gods of the Gates, which is essentially a knockoff of Game of Thrones. And she's also very much into cosplay, but because she is plus sized, like plus size people are just kind of looked down upon within the cosplay universe. Most fanfics are about, like the perfect skinny girls, and not always reality. So she has her co-writer kind of guy who beta reads all of her stories. She's really in love with him, and she ends up being asked out on a date by one of the main actors, who would be the Kit Harington actor, the Jon Snow actor from Game of Thrones. After like a picture of her in her cosplay outfit goes viral, and that people were just being like merciless to her about being plus sized and in this outfit. And he doesn't know that it's the person he's been corresponding with, and as a fan fiction writer, and he ends up asking her out on a date. He figures out who she is during that first date, but she has absolutely no idea the opposite. And his personality, his entire personality has been made up based on like issues from his past and things like that, and she has to get to know him. And yeah, it also like really takes a lot of stabs at the last season of Game of Thrones and how things just kind of went off the rails in the show. I really liked it. So I had my issues. I talked about those, but at the same time, it was just really enjoyable. And I really enjoyed it a lot. All right, then the last book that I read, I have to say this. So this is the first book I have read as an ebook since the Kindle came out. Like, I got the very first Kindle. I was so excited about it. Ended up not enjoying reading an ebook at all. So I read a couple of ebooks when it first came out and ended up just setting it aside. However, I did continue to I never purchased an ebook. I continued on to get BookBub emails and then the Amazon Prime first reads, and I have over 100 ebooks that I have gotten for free to read on my Kindle. And I never picked them up, ever. I really wanted to read the book, The Wig, the Bitch, and the Meltdown by G. Emanuel, because I am I don't like the current America's Next Top Model, but I was a huge America's Next Top Model fan, back in the day. I'd say I probably watched it through through season, maybe season 12 was the last season that I watched. And it, all these things are coming back out about ANTM, a lot of their disclosure agreements are now out of date, and there's a lot of tea being spilt. I'm watching all these interviews with former cast members and things, and It's like a guilty pleasure. I wanted to listen to this because I thought for sure that J. Manuel would be the one that narrated it. It is not available as an ebook. It was available on Scribd. I'm sorry, it was not available as a audiobook. It was available on Scribd as an ebook though. So I decided I would go ahead and read an ebook. I started this clear back in September, I think it was. It was right after it came out. And I finished it this month. How long it took me to finish it is no reflection on whether or not this book is good, because I ended up really liking this. 8.14 co-pal score, 4.07 on like a 5-star kind of thing, so rounding down to 4 stars. It is just so fun. You really can't be sure about how much of this is taken from real life versus what's made up as fiction, because there's definitely a lot of parallels between the show Model Muse in the book and ANTM and things that happen in there. I can see why J. Manuel and Tyra Banks are estranged from each other, because the Tyra Banks character in here is not the nicest character, and you can tell that those two do not get along anymore. It was so fun. And I have to say, I'm not as against the ebooks now as I was. So I am going to try to read some more ebooks moving forward. Maybe make it through some of those 100 books that are on my Kindle. Yeah, all right, so that was my January. Overall, I was really, really happy with this first month of the year. I have not any complaints. I hope that the rest of the year goes as well as January did. All right, so have you read any of these books? If so, what are your thoughts? I would love to hear from you down below. Do you agree with me? Do you think I'm absolutely crazy? Let me know. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you would like to see more from me, don't forget to go over and subscribe, and I will see you guys later. Bye.